The Galactic Confederacy of Sentient Beings had exactly one rule about Earth that was written in letters so large you could see them from the Andromeda Galaxy. Do not visit between 1946 and 1980. That was it. Simple, clear, tattooed on the forehead of every xenobiologist in the known universe. Commander Vexithor of the Luminari didn't read footnotes. To be fair, he didn't read much of anything except his own press clippings, which were considerable. Vexthor had successfully negotiated peaceful contact with 17 civilizations, subjugated 4 others, and once convinced an entire planet of telepathic jellyfish to accept a timeshare presentation. He was brilliant. He was decorated. He was about to make the single worst decision in the history of interstellar diplomacy. "Sir, the coordinates are locked," said his navigation officer, a nervous creature named Plip, who had 3 eyes and used all of them to read the manual. "But I must point out that Earth is currently in its red zone period. The warning is quite explicit. Warnings are for species that fail, Plip." Vexthor smoothed his iridescent head tendrils with the confidence of someone who had never been properly humiliated. "Look at the data. Primitive rocket technology, divided nation-states, no unified planetary government. They're perfect for First Contact Protocol 7. Plip's middle eye twitched. "Sir, Protocol 7 is the one where we arrive. They worship us as gods, and we guide them gently into the Confederacy while extracting valuable resources." "Exactly!" Vexthor slammed his appendage on the console, which made a sound like a disappointed wail. "We'll be heroes, the crew that brought Earth into the fold during their most vulnerable period. I can see the statue now, made of their primitive bronze, perhaps. Very retro." What Vexthor couldn't see was the small note at the bottom of the Earth file, written in the handwriting of the Confederacy's oldest xenoanthropologist, a 9,000-year-old being called simply the Warrior. "Whatever you do, don't go when their boomers are young. They've just discovered themselves and they're angry about everything. Wait until they're old and obsessed with lawn maintenance." The Luminari ship dropped out of hyperspace over Earth on August 15, 1974. This was a mistake. The first sign that something was wrong came when they tried to broadcast their standard greeting. "People of Earth, we come in peace. Remain calm. Your world is now under the protection of—" Someone interrupted the transmission. "Yo, is this the government trying to spy on us again?" The voice was young, male, and extremely stoned. "Because we already told you people, the war is bullshit, man. You can't just—" Wait, is this for real? Holy crap, Tommy, get the camera. There's like a ship up there." Vexthor stared at the communications console with all 4 of his sensory organs. Did that primitive just tell us the war is excrement?" "I believe it's a colloquialism, sir," Plip offered weakly. "Perhaps we should reconsider—" "Nonsense! One confused native doesn't represent the entire species." Vexthor adjusted his universal translator and tried again. "Humans of Earth, we are the Luminari, representatives of the Galactic Confederacy of Sentient Beings. We have come to offer you membership in our great alliance of worlds." 3 minutes passed. Then the radio crackled again. Different voice, female, also stoned. "Yeah, hi, alien dudes, we're gonna have to pass on that. We've got this whole thing going on right now where we're trying to figure out if society is, like, fundamentally broken. And we're pretty sure it is, so we're kind of busy with that. But thanks. Peace and love." The line went dead. Vexthor's head tendrils drooped. They declined?" "Sir, perhaps this is a sign that we should—" "They declined." Vexthor's voice reached frequencies that shattered 2 coffee mugs in the ship's galley. "In 17 galaxies, no one has ever declined Confederacy membership. Find me their leaders, their presidents, their kings, someone with authority." This turned out to be more complicated than expected. The Luminari ship spent the next 6 hours trying to figure out who was actually in charge of Earth in 1974. The Americans had a president named Gerald Ford, who nobody seemed to particularly like or hate, which the Luminari I found deeply confusing. The Russians had someone called Brezhnev, who had eyebrows that could be seen from space. The Chinese had Mao, who was apparently important, but also possibly dying. Reports varied. The British had someone named Harold Wilson, who looked tired. But when the Luminari actually listened to the radio transmissions, it became clear that the people really making noise were everyone else. Young people, everywhere. Protesting, complaining, demanding, questioning, creating, destroying. Having opinions about everything. "Sir," Plip said, scanning the cultural database they'd compiled, "I'm detecting unprecedented levels of civil unrest, countercultural movements, and something called disco." "Disco?" Vexthor pulled up the data stream and immediately regretted it. The image showed humans in clothing so shiny it hurt to look at, moving their bodies in ways that defied several laws of physics. What are they doing?" "Dancing, sir. Apparently it's very popular." Vexthor made a decision. "We're landing in their largest population center. We'll make contact with their leaders directly, demonstrate our superior technology, and bring order to this chaos. Prepare the landing site." "Sir, which largest population center?" "I don't care. Pick one." They picked Los Angeles. This was another mistake. The Luminari ship descended over Los Angeles on a Wednesday afternoon, which was significant because Wednesdays in 1974, Los Angeles were when absolutely nothing got done. The ship was massive, gleaming, and impossible to ignore. Roughly the size of 3 football fields, stuck together with good intentions and anti-gravity plating. It hovered over Sunset Boulevard. Traffic stopped. People got out of their cars. Vexthor watched from the bridge as thousands of humans gathered below, pointing up at his magnificent vessel. "Now we have their attention." He activated the external speakers. "People of Earth, behold the Luminari. We have crossed the vast emptiness of space to—" "Far out!" someone yelled from below. "Groovy!" screamed someone else. "Is it a new movie?" a voice asked. "Is this for a movie?" Vexthor's confidence flickered. What is a movie?" Plip pulled up the data. "Apparently, humans create fictional visual narratives for entertainment. This area is known for producing them." "Fictional?" Vexthor was now officially annoyed. "We are not fictional. We are real. We are here. Why are they not afraid?" Because, as it turned out, the humans who had gathered below were mostly between the ages of 18 and 30. They had grown up with science fiction. They had watched Star Trek. They had read Asimov and Heinlein and Clarke. They had been expecting aliens for their entire lives, and they were disappointed. "Hey!" A young man with hair down to his shoulders and a tie-dyed shirt that looked like a rainbow had thrown up on it, cupped his hands around his mouth. "Hey, aliens! Can you take us to your leader? We want to file a complaint about our leaders." Another voice joined in. "Yeah! And can you explain why the universe exists? We've been trying to figure that out for weeks." "Do you guys have better weed up there?" someone else shouted, which got a laugh from the crowd. Vexthor's head tendrils were now completely inverted, which was the Luminari equivalent of a nervous breakdown. They want to complain to US about their problems? "Sir, I really think we should—" "No! We are not leaving until we establish proper diplomatic relations. Deploy the contact team. We're going down there." The contact team consisted of Vexthor, Plip, and 3 security officers named Kren, Voss, and Tillix. They were armed with universal translators, cultural databases, and weapons that could stun an elephant at 50 paces. They wore their ceremonial diplomatic robes, which shimmered with the captured light of 17 stars. They descended on a beam of pure energy that deposited them gently in the middle of Sunset Boulevard. The crowd immediately surrounded them. "Whoa! Dude! Are those costumes?" Vexthor drew himself up to his full height, which was impressive if you were into that sort of thing. "I am Commander Vexthor of the Luminari. I speak with the authority of the Galactic Confederacy of Sentient Beings. Take me to your leader." A young woman with flowers in her hair stepped forward. She was wearing bell-bottoms and a vest with fringe. She looked at Vexthor with the kind of intense, unblinking stare that immediately made him uncomfortable. "Far out," she said slowly. "You're really from space." "Yes, finally! Someone who understands." "That's so sad, man." She shook her head. "You came all this way just to be part of the system, to impose hierarchy and order. Don't you realize that authority is just like a construct?" Vexthor's translator struggled with this sentence for a full 5 seconds. "A construct? Authority is necessary for civilization. Says who?" The woman spread her arms. "Look around, man. We're deconstructing all that. We're creating a new way of being. You should try it. Drop out. Tune in. Be free. What?" A man with a beard that could hide small animals pushed forward. "Hey, man, question your ship. Does it run on like oil? Because we're having this whole thing right now about oil, and it's really bumming everyone out." "Oil? We use quantum flux drives powered by quantum." Another person lit up. "Oh man, are you talking about quantum consciousness? Because I read this book about how everything is connected through quantum fields and—" "No, that's not how quantum mechanics—" "Hey!" A teenager with a camera pushed through the crowd. "Can I take your picture? This is going to be huge. Everyone's going to want to see this." "Wait!" Vexthor held up an appendage. "All of you, stop! We need to establish proper protocols. You need to take me to your government, your president." The crowd went silent. Then someone started laughing. Then everyone was laughing. "Take you to Ford?" The bearded man wheezed. "Man, Ford doesn't even know what day it is most of the time. You want to talk to someone in charge? You'd have better luck with my dealer." More laughter. Vexthor looked at Plip with all 4 sensory organs radiating panic. "What is happening?" Plip consulted his datapad, which was now scrolling cultural notes so fast it was smoking slightly. "Sir, I believe we're experiencing a phenomenon called counterculture. These humans appear to have rejected traditional authority structures in favor of, I'm reading this correctly, peace, love, and personal freedom. That's anarchy. They call it liberation, sir." A new voice cut through the crowd. "All right, everyone move, LAPD, clear the area." Vexthor felt a wave of relief. Finally, official authority, law enforcement, someone who understood order. 6 police officers pushed through the crowd. They looked at the aliens. The aliens looked at them. There was a long, awkward pause. "So," one of the officers said slowly, "you guys got a permit for this?" Vexthor's translator made a sound like a dying accordion. "A permit?" "Yeah, you know, street performance permit. You can't just land a, whatever that is, in the middle of sunset without proper authorization. We are aliens from space. We don't need a permit." The officer sighed, the sigh of someone who had seen too much weird stuff in Los Angeles to be impressed by anything anymore. "Look, buddy, I don't care if you're from Mars or Pasadena. You're blocking traffic, so either you got paperwork or you're moving along." "This is outrageous! We are representatives of a galactic civilization, and I'm representative of the Los Angeles Police Department, and I'm telling you to move it." The crowd had started chanting, "Let them stay! Let them stay! Let them stay!" One of the officers spoke into his radio. "Yeah, we got a situation on Sunset. Possible 415. Also possible 5150. Also possible... I don't know what code aliens are. Is there a code for aliens? Just send backup." Vexthor's head tendrils were now making a high-pitched whining sound. "We are leaving. Plip, get us back to the ship, now!" They materialized back on the bridge in a shower of sparkles that would have been impressive if anyone had been paying attention. Vexthor collapsed into his command chair. That was a disaster. "Sir, I did try to warn—" "I don't want to hear it, Plip." Vexthor pulled up the communication logs. Fine. They don't respect authority. They don't fear superior technology. They think we're a performance. Let's try a different approach. We'll contact their governments directly. Surely their leaders will be more reasonable. Plip made a sound that might have been a whimper. Over the next 72 hours, Commander Vexthor learned several important things about Earth in 1974. First, every government assumed the aliens were from a different government's secret project. The Americans thought the Luminari were Russian. The Russians thought they were American. The Chinese thought they were Soviet revisionists. The British thought they were probably French, which was their default assumption about anything confusing. Second, getting anyone in any government to actually respond to alien contact required filling out forms. So many forms. The Americans alone sent back a packet that was 300 pages long, mostly asking about tax status and whether the Luminarii ship had proper environmental impact clearances. Third, the young humans they'd met on Sunset Boulevard were not an isolated phenomenon. They were everywhere, and they were all questioning everything. Vexthor sat in his command chair, surrounded by data streams showing protests in Washington, London, Paris, Berlin, Tokyo, and approximately 700 other cities. "They're angry," he muttered. "Why are they so angry?" Plip had spent the last 2 days doing actual research, which was what happened when you had 3 eyes and actually used them. "Sir, from what I can determine, this generation has grown up in the shadow of nuclear annihilation, a pointless war in Southeast Asia, massive environmental destruction, political corruption, and the discovery that all the authority figures they were told to trust have been lying to them for decades. They're not angry, sir. They're furious, and they've decided to do something about it. That's not how civilizations work. You need order. You need hierarchy. You need people to just accept their place. Sir, with respect, I don't think these humans got that memo." Vexthor stared at the view screen showing Earth spinning peacefully below them, completely unaware that it was currently giving an existential crisis to one of the galaxy's most decorated first contact specialists. "We need a new strategy," he said finally. "We'll demonstrate our technological superiority. Show them what they could have if they join the Confederacy. That always works." Plip's middle eye twitched again, which it had been doing a lot lately. "Sir, perhaps you should let me do my job, Plip." The demonstration was scheduled for the following Tuesday in Nevada, far from any major population centers. The Luminari would showcase their technology in a controlled environment, invite representatives from various governments, and prove beyond all doubt that humanity needed galactic guidance. They sent out invitations through every official channel they could find. On Tuesday morning, they set up in the desert, force field generators, anti-gravity platforms, energy weapons set to stunning mode only, medical scanners that could cure most known diseases, and a food replicator that could create anything from pure energy. The government representatives arrived in helicopters and official vehicles, serious men in serious suits carrying serious briefcases. Also arriving, approximately 3,000 young people in Volkswagen vans, pickup trucks, and one memorable school bus painted like a Salvador Dali painting had mated with a kaleidoscope. What are they doing here?" Vexthor watched in horror as the unauthorized humans began setting up tents, starting campfires, and pulling out guitars. Plip checked the Earth internet, which was still mostly a military thing but had some surprising information. "Apparently, sir, someone leaked the location. It's spreading through what they call the underground network. Word of mouth primarily. They think this is going to be a happening." "A happening?" "It's a cultural event, sir. They believe we're here to, and I quote, expand everyone's consciousness and bring cosmic wisdom to the masses." Vexthor watched as 2 humans started playing frisbee directly in the path of his carefully arranged technological demonstration. This is not a happening. This is serious diplomatic contact. But the day was already spiraling out of control. The government officials wanted to see the weapons first, the weapons that could stun, disable, incapacitate. Very military, very practical. The young humans wanted to see the food replicator and immediately asked if it could make vegetarian options, because they'd recently decided that eating meat was morally problematic. The government officials wanted to understand the force field technology for defensive applications. The young humans wanted to know if the force fields could keep out bad vibes. The government officials asked detailed questions about propulsion systems and energy efficiency. The young humans asked if the ship ran on love energy, because they'd been reading about consciousness and physics, and weren't they kind of the same thing? By noon, Vexthor had a headache in organs he didn't know could have headaches. "Sir," Kren, one of the security officers, approached nervously. "We have a situation." "Of course we do. What now?" "Some of the humans have started modifying our equipment." "What?" Vexthor stormed over to the anti-gravity platform, which was supposed to be demonstrating levitation technology. Instead, he found 3 humans sitting cross-legged in mid-air, passing around something that was smoking, while a 4th human had opened the control panel and was poking at the circuits with a screwdriver. "What are you doing?" Vexthor's voice hit frequencies that made dogs 3 miles away start barking. The human with the screwdriver looked up. He had round glasses and hair that suggested he'd lost a fight with a wind turbine. "Oh hey, we were just wondering if we could modify this thing to run on solar power instead of whatever quantum stuff you're using. Solar's renewable, man. Better for the planet. That's a quantum flux drive. It's operating on principles your species won't understand for another century." "Yeah, but have you tried solar? Because we've been doing this whole oil crisis thing, and it's really making us think about alternatives." "Get away from that!" But the damage was done. The human had disconnected something important, and the anti-gravity platform began spinning like a deranged carousel, sending the 3 floating humans flying in different directions while playing what sounded like psychedelic sitar music from its speakers. "How is it making music? It doesn't have speakers!" The human with the screwdriver looked pleased. "Oh, I added those. Found some parts in our van. Figured if you're going to float around, you might as well have a soundtrack, right?" Vexthor made a sound that Plip's translator refused to process. The rest of the day continued in a similar vein. The medical scanner that could cure cancer somehow ended up being used to determine which humans were most aligned with the cosmic consciousness. The energy weapons were declared harsh and against the whole vibe we're going for. Thus, the food replicator became wildly popular, but only for making increasingly bizarre flavor combinations that made Tilix, the ship's xenobiologist, question everything he knew about human taste buds. By evening, the official government representatives had given up and left, mumbling about reports and committees and possibly military intervention. The young humans, meanwhile, had turned the entire demonstration area into what they called a gathering of minds and spirits under the cosmic banner of universal understanding. Vexthor called it the worst day of my life. Someone had found a guitar, then someone else found drums, then someone else found what appeared to be a flute made from a piece of pipe. Music started happening. Dancing started happening. The Luminary technology continued to malfunction in increasingly creative ways because the humans kept touching things. "Sir," Plip approached carefully, "I really think we should retreat to the ship and what, Plip? Admit defeat? Report back to the Confederacy that we couldn't handle one primitive planet because their young people don't understand respect? Actually, sir, I was going to suggest we retreat to the ship and actually read the warning that the Confederacy posted about this time period." Vexthor froze. "There's more to the warning?" Plip pulled up the file on his datapad. "The one with the footnotes. The long footnotes. According to the Xenoanthropology Division, humans born between 1946 and 1964 represent a unique challenge in galactic contact scenarios. They are the first generation to grow up with nuclear weapons, space travel, and television. They watched their leaders lie about wars. They saw their heroes get assassinated. They discovered that the previous generation had almost destroyed the planet with weapons they promised would keep everyone safe. They decided collectively that maybe adults didn't know everything, and they're currently in the process of dismantling every assumption their civilization is built on. Vexthor listened with mounting horror. Plip continued. The report recommends waiting until this generation is in their 60s, at which point they'll be much more interested in property values and complaining about noise than in questioning the fundamental nature of reality and authority. So what you're telling me, Vexthor said slowly, is that we've arrived at the exact moment when Earth's humans are most psychologically prepared to reject everything we represent. Yes, sir. That's what the warning says, in very large letters, right at the top. Vexthor looked out at the chaos below. Someone had convinced Voss to try something they called meditation, and now the security officer was sitting in a lotus position making humming sounds. The food replicator was now producing something the humans called brownies at an alarming rate. Two humans were trying to teach Tilix how to play hacky sack, which he was failing at because he had tentacles instead of feet. "We can fix this," Vexthor said, but his voice lacked conviction. "We just need to adapt our approach, find common ground, show them that the Confederacy represents progress and—" A young woman walked up to them. She was eating what appeared to be a sandwich that the food replicator had definitely not been programmed to make. "Hey, alien dudes, quick question. Do you guys have, like, a government on your planet?" "Of course we have a government. We have a confederacy, a great alliance of—" "Yeah, see, that's the problem right there." She took another bite of her mysterious sandwich. "Government is just another word for control, man. And control is what's killing this planet. You came here thinking we'd be impressed by your technology and your order and your rules, but what we really need is freedom. Real freedom, not your version of it. Freedom without order is chaos. Maybe chaos is what we need right now." She smiled, and it was the kind of smile that suggested she'd figured out something important that Vexthor was still missing. Maybe order is what got us into this mess in the first place. She walked away, leaving Vexthor standing there with his head tendrils drooping so low they were touching the ground. "Sir?" Plip ventured carefully. "Don't, Plip. Just don't." They retreated to the ship that night, leaving the humans to their gathering. From orbit, they could see the campfires, the lights, the music that was somehow reaching into space despite the lack of proper amplification technology. Vexthor sat in his command chair and did something he hadn't done in 17 successful first contact missions. He admitted he didn't know what to do. "We could use the compliance protocol," Kren suggested. "Broadcast messages that make them more agreeable to our suggestions." "That's mind control," Plip said, horrified. "That's strictly forbidden by Confederacy law." "Plip's right," Vexthor said tiredly. "And besides, I don't think it would work. These humans have spent the last decade learning to spot manipulation and reject it. They'd probably notice and just get angrier." "We could demonstrate our military superiority," Voss offered. "Not attack them, just show them what we're capable of." "They have nuclear weapons pointed at each other," Vexthor said. "Threats of violence are not going to impress them. If anything, it'll just confirm their suspicions that authority figures are dangerous." "Then what do we do?" Tilix asked. "We can't just leave. We've made contact. We're committed." "Maybe," Plip said slowly, "we're approaching this wrong. Maybe we should stop trying to make them join our system and start understanding their system." Everyone looked at him. "That's exactly what I've been doing," Vexthor protested. "I've been reading their broadcasts, analyzing their culture, studying their—" "With respect, sir, you've been studying their governments and military capabilities. But that's not where the power is right now. The power is with those young humans, the ones who are questioning everything. Maybe we should ask them what they want? I know what they want. They want peace and love and to dismantle capitalism or whatever they're going on about. Then maybe we should ask them how we can help with that, instead of trying to force them into our idea of what's good for them. Vexthor considered this for a long moment. It went against everything he'd learned in 17 first contact scenarios. You didn't ask primitives what they wanted. You told them what they needed and guided them toward it. But nothing about Earth was going according to plan. Fine, he said finally. Tomorrow we'll try it your way. We'll talk to them like equals, which is going to be excruciating. But at this point, I'll try anything. The next morning, Vexthor did something that horrified his entire crew. He went down to Earth alone. No guards, no weapons, no carefully prepared speeches, just him, a translator, and a growing sense that his career was about to explode like a supernova in slow motion. He landed the shuttle near a place the humans called Golden Gate Park in San Francisco, which was apparently where a lot of the counterculture people gathered. It was beautiful in an uncivilized way. All trees and grass and humans sprawled everywhere like they owned the place. Which technically they did. A group of them noticed the shuttle and wandered over. They didn't run, they didn't panic. They looked curious. "Hey!" One of them, a tall man with beads in his beard, waved. "You're back! Far out! Did you bring more of those things that float?" "No," Vexthor said, feeling extremely uncomfortable without his security detail. "I came to talk." "Talk? Yeah, man, talking's good." The bearded man sat down on the grass and patted the spot next to him. "Come on, sit. You've been standing this whole time. That's got to be exhausting." Vexthor had never sat on grass before. It felt weird, squishy, alive. He didn't hate it. More humans gathered. Someone passed around something that smelled pungent and made Vexthor's translator malfunction briefly. Someone else pulled out her acoustic guitar and started strumming quietly. "So," the bearded man said, "what do you want to talk about?" Vexthor took a breath, which his species didn't technically need, but did anyway for dramatic effect. "I want to understand why you rejected us. The Confederacy offers technology, protection, guidance. We can help your species reach its full potential. Why did you say no?" The humans looked at each other. A few of them smiled. A young woman with flowers woven into her hair spoke up. "Because we don't trust anyone who shows up offering to help us anymore. We've heard that before, from our government, from corporations, from everyone in power who promised things would get better if we just listened and obeyed. And you know what we got? War, pollution, inequality, lies. But we're different. We're not your government. We're an advanced civilization that still has a hierarchy," another human cut in. "That still operates on power and control. You said you have a confederacy. Who's in charge of the confederacy? Well, there's the Council of... See, there it is. A council. People making decisions for everyone else. That's the same system we're trying to get away from." Vexthor's head tendrils twitched. "But you need organization. You need structure. How else do you coordinate billions of individuals?" "Maybe we don't," the bearded man said. "Maybe we find a new way, a way where everyone has a voice, where decisions come from the people, not from some council sitting in a tower somewhere. That's anarchy." "Maybe," the woman with flowers in her hair said, "or maybe it's evolution. You ever think about that? Maybe your confederacy is just another version of the same old system, the same power dynamics that have been crushing people forever. And maybe we're ready for something different." Vexthor felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Doubt. Real, genuine doubt about whether he actually knew what was best for another species. But you're primitive." The word came out before he could stop it. "You're still fighting with each other. You're destroying your own planet. You clearly need help." The mood in the circle changed. The music stopped. "Primitive," the bearded man repeated softly. "Is that what you think of us?" I didn't mean..." No, you did mean it. The man's voice was still calm, but there was steel underneath. You came here thinking you were better than us, smarter, more evolved, and maybe you are technologically. But you know what? We've been watching you, and you don't seem that much better. You've got ships and weapons and technology, but you're still operating on the same fear-based, control-based mindset that's been causing problems since the beginning of time. You haven't evolved. You've just got fancier toys. Vexthor felt like he'd been hit. We have peace in the Confederacy. We have order. And what did you have to give up to get that peace, the woman asked. Freedom, individuality, the right to question authority? Because that sounds like a pretty high price. It's not. We haven't. Vexthor sputtered. The Confederacy represents the pinnacle of civilized achievement. For you, maybe. An older man, probably in his 30s, spoke up from the back of the group. But see, here's the thing. We're at a crossroads right now. We can either keep going the way we've been going, following authority figures who tell us what to think and what to do, or we can try something different, something radical. We can build a world based on cooperation instead of competition, on love instead of fear, on freedom instead of control. And you think that will work? Vexthor couldn't help himself. You think you can just decide to be better and it'll happen? We don't know if it'll work, the bearded man admitted. But we know the old way doesn't work. So we're going to try, and maybe we'll fail, but at least we'll fail trying to build something beautiful instead of succeeding at building another prison. Vexthor sat there on the grass, surrounded by humans who should have been grateful for his arrival, who should have been begging to join his advanced civilization, and instead they were pitying him. They were looking at him like he was the one who didn't understand. I came here to save you, he said quietly. Maybe we don't need saving, the woman with flowers said gently. Maybe we need to save ourselves, figure out our own path, make our own mistakes. Maybe that's what growing up is. Someone started playing the guitar again, soft, gentle, the kind of music that made you think about big things like existence and meaning and whether you'd been wrong about everything. Vexthor sat there for another hour, just listening. The humans talked about their dreams for a better world, about ending war, about saving the environment, about creating communities based on mutual aid instead of competition. Some of it was naive. Some of it was impractical. Some of it was beautiful. And some of it made him wonder if maybe, just maybe, the Confederacy had gotten comfortable, had stopped innovating, had created peace through conformity instead of genuine understanding. He didn't want to think that. It hurt to think that. But sitting there in Golden Gate Park on a sunny afternoon in 1974, surrounded by humans who were absolutely certain they could change everything despite having no idea how, Vexthor had to admit something. He had no idea what to do with these people. He returned to the ship as the sun was setting, painting the sky in colors that his species didn't have names for because they had 3 suns and never saw sunsets like this. The crew was waiting for him on the bridge, looking anxious. Well, Plip asked. Vexthor sat heavily in his command chair. I talked to them, really talked to them, and I think we made a terrible mistake coming here. Sir, they don't want what we're offering, Plip. And after talking to them, I'm not sure I can blame them. They're trying to build something new, something we haven't seen before, and we just showed up and assumed we knew better. But we do know better, Kren protested. We've been spacefaring for millennia. They've barely made it to their own moon, and yet they're asking questions we stopped asking a long time ago. Vexthor pulled up the Earth file on his screen. When was the last time anyone in the Confederacy questioned whether the Confederacy should exist? Silence. Exactly. We've gotten comfortable. We've created a system and decided it's the best system, and anyone who doesn't want to join must be primitive or foolish. But what if we're wrong? Sir, you're talking about centuries of established protocol and procedure. I'm talking about the fact that these humans, these primitive humans, are braver than we are. They're looking at their entire world and saying, this isn't working, and they're trying to fix it. When was the last time the Confederacy tried to fix anything? Plip's three eyes were wide. Sir, what are you suggesting? Vexthor stared at the planet below them, at the swirling blue and white and green that held billions of beings who were absolutely convinced they could change everything. I'm suggesting that maybe Earth doesn't need the Confederacy. Maybe Earth needs to figure things out on its own, and maybe we need to learn from them instead of teaching them. That's not how first contact works. Maybe it should be. The bridge fell silent. Outside, Earth continued spinning, completely unconcerned with the existential crisis happening in orbit. Then the communications console beeped. Sir, Tillich said nervously, we're receiving a transmission. It's from the Confederacy. Vexthor's head tendrils wilted. Put it through. The screen flickered, and suddenly they were looking at the Council of Elders, represented by a being called Arbitrator Kelmoth, who had approximately 900 years of experience and absolutely zero patience for failure. Commander Vexthor. The voice was like gravel sliding down a mountain of disappointment. We've been monitoring your mission. We need to discuss your complete and utter lack of progress. Vexthor straightened. Arbitrator, I can explain. You've been on Earth for 2 weeks. You've failed to establish diplomatic relations with any government. You've allowed your technology to be modified by primitives. You've participated in what our analysts are calling a happening, which sounds horrifying. And according to our last report, you spent yesterday sitting in grass, having what appeared to be an existential crisis. Arbitrator, Earth is different than... Of course it's different. That's why there was a warning you ignored. Do you know how many species have made that same mistake? How many? 7. 7 different expeditions over the last 50 years. And do you know what happened to all of them? Vexthor had a sinking feeling. What happened? They came back changed, questioning, philosophical. One crew started a commune, Vexthor. They gave up their ranks and started growing vegetables. Maybe they had the right idea. Do not go down that road. Kelmoth's image flickered with what might have been rage or a bad connection. You have 48 hours to establish proper diplomatic channels with Earth's governments, or you are being recalled. Do I make myself clear? But the governments aren't really the ones with the power right now. 48 hours, Commander. The transmission cut off. Vexthor sat in silence for a long moment. Then he started laughing. It was not a happy laugh. It was the laugh of someone who had just realized they were thoroughly doomed and had decided to find it funny instead of tragic. Sir, Plip approached carefully. Are you all right? No, Plip, I'm not all right. I've just been given an ultimatum to achieve something that is impossible with beings who have fundamentally rejected everything I represent. And if I fail, my career is over and I'll probably end up growing vegetables on some commune somewhere. Would that be so bad? Vexthor stopped laughing. What? Would that be so bad? Plip repeated. Sir, I've been watching you for the last 2 weeks. You've been more alive, more engaged, more genuinely interested in these humans than you've been in any of our last 17 missions. Maybe the Confederacy is wrong. Maybe these humans are showing us something important. Ooh, Plip, you're talking about throwing away everything we've worked for. To do what? To add another planet to a Confederacy that doesn't really need them? To impose our order on beings who are trying to find their own way? Sir, what if Earth's greatest contribution to the galaxy isn't joining us? What if it's inspiring us to be better? Vexthor stared at his navigation officer, who was supposed to be the cautious one, and realized that the humans had gotten to him too. Maybe they'd gotten to all of them. So what do we do? Vexthor asked, and for the first time in his career, he genuinely didn't know the answer. Plip's 3 eyes sparkled with something that might have been excitement or terror or both. We have 48 hours. I say we use them to do something the Confederacy has never done before, which is, we ask Earth what they think should happen next. It was absolutely the worst idea Vexthor had ever heard. Which was why, 12 hours later, he was broadcasting a message to every television, radio, and communication device on the entire planet. This was, officially, against approximately 417 different Confederacy protocols. Vexthor was past caring. "People of Earth," he began, and his translator made sure it came through in every language simultaneously. "My name is Commander Vexthor of the Luminari. 2 weeks ago, my crew and I arrived on your planet with the intention of inviting you to join the Galactic Confederacy of Sentient Beings. We believed we were bringing you a gift. We believed we were offering progress." He paused. Back on the ship, his crew was watching in what could only be described as terror mixed with grudging respect. "We were wrong. Not about our technology, not about our achievements, but about our assumptions. We assumed you needed us. We assumed you wanted to become part of our system. We assumed we knew what was best for you." On Earth, millions of humans were watching, in living rooms, in bars, in government offices, on the street where someone had wheeled out a TV on a cart. Your young people showed us something we hadn't seen in a long time in the Confederacy. Questioning, real, genuine questioning of authority, of systems, of the way things have always been done. And they did it without weapons, without violence. Just by refusing to accept that the old ways were the only ways. Government officials were starting to panic. The military was mobilizing. But they were too slow, and the message was already spreading. "So, here's what we're going to do. We're going to leave. We're going to go back to the Confederacy and tell them that Earth is not ready to join." He could hear the gasps from his crew. This was career suicide. This was insane. But not because you're primitive, not because you lack technology, but because you're trying to build something new, something we've never seen before, and you deserve the chance to do that without interference from civilizations that think they know better. Vexthor took a deep breath. "However, before we go, we want to make you an offer. Not our technology, not membership in the Confederacy, but information. Everything we know about sustainable energy, about environmental restoration, about peaceful coexistence, all of it, free, no strings attached. No obligations, just information you can use or ignore as you see fit." On Earth, the young people in Golden Gate Park were cheering. The government officials were arguing about whether this was a trick. The military was confused about whether they were supposed to shoot at the ship or not. "You asked us why you should trust us, and the answer is you shouldn't. You shouldn't trust anyone who tells you they know what's best for you. Figure it out yourselves. Make your own mistakes. Build your own future. And maybe, in a few decades, when you've created whatever new thing you're trying to create, you can teach us something." Vexthor smiled, and his translator somehow conveyed the emotion, even though his species didn't smile the same way humans did. "Good luck, Earth. You're going to need it, because what you're trying to do is hard, maybe impossible, but watching you try has been the most interesting 2 weeks of my career." He ended the transmission. The crew stared at him. "Sir," Kren said slowly, "you just committed approximately 400 separate violations of Confederacy protocol. I know. They're going to dismantle your career. Probably. They might even put you on trial. Very likely. So why are you smiling?" Vexthor realized he was smiling, and it felt good. "Because for the first time in 17 first contact missions, I feel like I actually did something right." The next 6 hours were chaos. The Confederacy sent approximately 900 urgent transmissions, each one more furious than the last. Arbitrator Kelmoth's head exploded, metaphorically speaking, though the visual was impressive enough that it might as well have been literal. But Vexthor kept his word. The Luminari databanks opened, and every piece of non-military technology, every environmental solution, every bit of useful knowledge flooded toward Earth in a data stream that would take humans years to sort through and understand. Energy systems that didn't burn fossil fuels, medical treatments that didn't require surgery, agricultural techniques that could feed billions without destroying ecosystems. All of it. Everything. The governments tried to contain it, classify it, control it. But the data was everywhere. On television, on radio, scientists were getting it, universities were getting it. And most importantly, all those young people with their questions and their guitars were getting it too. "Sir," Plip said quietly, watching the data transfer complete, "you realize we just armed a primitive civilization with technology they might not be ready for." "I know," Vexthor said, "but you know what? I think they are ready. Not for membership in someone else's civilization, but for building their own. And now they have the tools to do it. Or the tools to destroy themselves even faster. Maybe, but that's their choice to make, not ours." As the Luminari ship prepared to leave orbit, one final transmission came through. It was audio only, crackling with interference, from somewhere in San Francisco. "Hey, alien dude, this is Static." The guy with the beard from the park just wanted to say thanks for listening, for really listening, and for the info. "We're going to do something with it, something good, or we're going to try anyway, and maybe we'll fail. But like you said, at least we'll fail trying to build something beautiful." More Static. "Also, if you ever want to come back and just hang out, not with all the diplomatic stuff, just as friends, you're welcome here. We'll teach you about music and weed and questioning everything. And maybe you can teach us about stars." The transmission ended with what sounded like guitar music and laughter. Vexthor felt something warm in his chest cavity, which was weird because his species didn't have chest cavities that did that. "Set course for the Confederacy," he ordered. "Maximum speed. Let's get this over with." As Earth shrank behind them, Plip pulled up one final analysis of their mission. "For the record, sir, by every traditional metric, this mission was a complete failure. We failed to establish diplomatic relations. We failed to integrate Earth into the Confederacy. We failed to demonstrate proper technological superiority. We gave away valuable information for nothing, and we're probably all going to be demoted or worse." "Your point?" "My point is that despite all that, this feels like the most successful mission we've ever run." Vexthor nodded slowly. "File it under successful failures. Maybe we'll start a new category." The journey back to Confederacy space took 2 weeks. During that time, they received approximately 6,000 messages from Earth. Scientists asking questions about the technology, governments demanding explanations, but mostly thousands of young humans saying thank you, asking questions about the universe, sharing their ideas for a better world, and inviting them to come back sometime to try something called pizza. By the time they arrived at Confederacy headquarters, Vexthor had composed his report. It was not the kind of report the Council of Elders was expecting. The hearing was spectacular, in the way that natural disasters are spectacular. Vexthor stood in front of the Council of Elders, all 17 of them, representing all the major species in the Confederacy. They looked at him with expressions ranging from disappointment to fury, to what might have been curiosity. Arbitrator Kelmuth spoke first. "Commander Vexthor, do you understand why you're here?" "Because I violated protocol and gave advanced technology to a non-member species without authorization." "Among other things," Kelmuth's image flickered, "you ignored direct orders. You made contact outside approved channels. You broadcast a planetary-wide transmission without clearance. You essentially told an entire world to ignore us. I told them to think for themselves." "That's the same thing," another elder spoke up, a being called Harmonizer Velnek, from a species that looked like sentient coral. "Commander, your report makes several unusual claims. You state that Earth is not ready for Confederacy membership, but not for the usual reasons." "That's correct. You claim they're attempting to create a new form of civilization, one based on..." Velnek consulted the report. "Cooperation over competition, questioning over obedience, and individual freedom over collective security." Do you realize how dangerous that sounds? Do you realize how amazing that sounds? Vexthor countered. When was the last time any of us tried something new? When was the last time the Confederacy innovated instead of just expanding? The elders looked at each other, the kind of look that suggested no one had a good answer. A third elder, a massive being called Observer Thundrak, who was basically a floating crystal, spoke in a voice like wind chimes. The report also states that Earth's young population demonstrated a fundamental rejection of hierarchical authority structures. This concerns us. Why? Vexthor asked. Because it might give other species ideas. The silence that followed was loud. Commander, Kelmoth said carefully, are you suggesting that the Confederacy itself is flawed? I'm suggesting that maybe we've gotten comfortable. Maybe we've stopped asking the hard questions. Maybe Earth is showing us that there's more than one way to build a civilization. They're barely spacefaring, and yet they're asking questions we stopped asking millennia ago. Another elder joined in, a serpentine being called Adjudicator Sisnath. What you're describing sounds like chaos. Without hierarchy, without order, how do they expect to function? I don't know. Vexthor's head tendrils spread wide, and that's what makes it interesting. They're trying something new, and maybe it won't work, but at least they're trying. So your recommendation, Kelmoth said slowly, is that we leave Earth alone. Let them do whatever they're doing, and in the meantime they have all our non-military technology. Yes. Now, and you don't see any problems with this plan? Oh, I see plenty of problems. They might use the technology to destroy themselves faster. They might create something worse than what they have now. They might succeed in building their new civilization and then decide they don't like it. But you know what? That's their choice to make. Vexthor was breathing hard now, which again, his species didn't technically need to do, but the moment called for it. We keep treating First Contact like we're teachers and they're students, like we have all the answers and they just need to listen. But Earth taught me that maybe we don't have all the answers. Maybe we've just gotten good at pretending we do. The council chamber fell silent. 17 of the most powerful beings in the galaxy sat there, contemplating what a mid-level commander had just said to them. Finally, Observer Thundrak spoke. What you're proposing is unprecedented. It goes against thousands of years of protocol. I know. It could have consequences we can't predict. I know. Other species might hear about this, might start asking their own questions, might start wondering if the Confederacy is really the best way. Good, Vexthor said simply. Maybe they should wonder. The crystal being flickered with what might have been surprise or amusement or possibly indigestion. You're either very brave or very foolish. Probably both. Harmonizer Velnek leaned forward. Your crew, they supported this decision? Every single one of them, even though they knew it might end their careers. And if we were to strip you of your rank, bar you from ever commanding another First Contact mission? Vexthor smiled. Then I suppose I'd have to find something else to do. Maybe start that commune the other crews mentioned. The vegetables do sound appealing. A sound rippled through the chamber. It took Vexthor a moment to realize it was laughter. Quiet, reluctant, but laughter nonetheless. Arbitrator Kelmoth held up an appendage for silence. Commander Vexthor, against my better judgment and against approximately 9,000 years of precedent, this council has decided to accept your report. Vexthor's head tendrils shot up. What? Earth will be placed under what we're calling developmental protection. No contact for 50 years, no interference. We'll monitor from a distance, but we won't interfere with whatever they're trying to build. But I violated protocol. You did. Kelmoth's expression was unreadable. You also made us ask questions we've been avoiding for a very long time. About whether we're helping species or just creating more copies of ourselves. About whether the Confederacy is the only way. About whether we've gotten too comfortable. Observer Thundrak chimed in. We're not happy about it. We're not even sure it's the right decision, but Earth has forced us to think, and perhaps that's valuable in itself. You're not charging me? Oh, you're still getting demoted, Kelmoth said. And you're banned from first contact missions for 10 years. But after that, if you're still interested, we're creating a new position, cultural liaison. Someone who can make contact with species that might be trying to do things differently. Someone who can learn instead of just teach. Vexthor stood there, stunned. We're calling it the Earth Protocol, Velnik added. Appropriate, we thought. As Vexthor left the council chamber, Plip was waiting outside. Well? The navigator asked nervously. We're not fired. We're not? We're demoted, and I'm banned from first contact for a decade, but after that, they're letting me create something new. Plip's 3 eyes widened. The humans did that. The humans actually made the council change. They didn't even mean to, Vexthor said and laughed. That's the best part. They were just being themselves, and somehow that was enough to shake the foundations of the oldest civilization in the galaxy. Back on Earth, nobody noticed the alien ship leaving. They were too busy arguing about the new technology, forming committees to study it, protesting the government's attempts to classify it, and generally doing exactly what humans in the 1970s did best, questioning everything and refusing to accept simple answers. In Golden Gate Park, the bearded man sat with his friends, passing around the information they'd received about sustainable energy. You think this'll work? Someone asked. No idea, the bearded man admitted. But we're going to try. That's what we do. We try things, we fail, we try again. That's how you build something new. The aliens seemed cool, the woman with flowers in her hair said. Different from what I expected. They actually listened. Maybe that's what we need more of, another person mused. Listening, really listening, even to people who think differently than us. Heavy, man. Heavy. They sat there as the sun set, talking about the future, about possibilities, about building a world that didn't repeat the mistakes of the past. They had no idea if it would work, no idea if they'd succeed, but they were going to try. And somewhere in deep space, Commander Vexthor looked at the star charts and made a note in his personal log. Earth, a small planet, orbiting an unremarkable star in an unfashionable arm of the galaxy. Population, stubborn. Technology level, primitive but improving. Readiness for Confederacy membership, maybe never, and that might be the most interesting thing about them. He paused, then added, Note to future contact teams. If you arrive when their boomers are young, bring patience, bring humility, and maybe bring a guitar. You'll need all 3. 50 years later, when the Confederacy finally checked in on Earth again, they found something unexpected. The planet hadn't destroyed itself. It hadn't created the utopia the young people of the 1970s had dreamed about either. It had done something much more human. It had muddled through, made progress, made mistakes, kept trying. They'd used the Luminari technology, but they'd modified it, adapted it, made it their own. They'd created new forms of energy, new ways of organizing, new solutions to old problems. Some worked, some failed. They kept going. And when the Confederacy ship arrived in 2024, the response they got was different than what Vexthor had received 50 years earlier. Oh, hey, the transmission came back. You're back. Cool. Listen, we've been working on some stuff. Want to come down and compare notes? See what we've both learned? Not save us, not teach us, not lead us. Compare notes. The message was sent by a woman in her 70s who had flowers in her hair and memories of a strange alien who had listened to her in a park half a century ago. Commander Vexthor, now Adjudicator Vexthor of the newly formed Cultural Exchange Division, read the message and smiled. Set course for Earth, he ordered his crew, and someone find me a guitar. I have a feeling we're going to need it. Because some species, it turned out, didn't need saving. They needed space. Space to grow, to fail, to figure things out on their own. And sometimes the greatest gift an advanced civilization could give was the humility to step back and just watch. Earth had taught the Confederacy something that 50 millennia of expansion hadn't, that there was more than one way to build a future, and sometimes the most primitive species had the most advanced ideas about what it meant to actually live. The Luminary ship descended toward Earth for the second time, 50 years after their first disastrous visit, but this time they weren't coming to teach. They were coming to learn, and maybe, just maybe, to have some pizza and figure out what groovy actually meant. Because the universe, as it turned out, was a lot more interesting when you stopped pretending you had all the answers.